In Denver, Colorado, I sat down with Education Secretary Arne Duncan, Birchbox co-founder and entrepreneur Katya Beauchamp, and Venture for America founder Andrew Yang. We talked about how the American workforce is changing and what we need to do to stay ahead. Andrew, you have said, your goal, I should say, also is to create 100,000 new U.S. jobs by 2025. You think we are training people for careers that existed 20 years ago. Do we need something drastic, something dramatic to really shake things up?
Well, I believe we do. And as one example, there's a town in Michigan where they're testing self-driving cars, and they're projected to come online in 20 years. Right now, there are about 900,000 Americans that drive cars for a living, and many of them are not really prepared for a different type of career.
Bus drivers, taxi drivers, chauffeurs.
Yeah, so there's a curve coming. This is the first time in recorded history where technological advances actually haven't driven up the average income or the median income. And so our system right now is in a foot race against technological progress to be able to educate people for the jobs that are coming this year, next year, 10, 20 years from now.
And so what is your recommendation? What do we need to do? Because you say that there is this misconception that innovation only comes from Silicon Valley, that we need to look more at these cities that frankly need it most, the Detroits, the Baltimores.
Well, the way I learned was that I had a more experienced mentor that I worked for a number of years. And I think that apprenticeship really is something that the U.S. needs to bring back, not just in entrepreneurship, which is where my organization, Venture for America, focuses, but really in a variety of different fields. Right now, part of our educational system is that we have sort of a one-size-fits-all factory model all the way up, including for four-year degrees. And we need to introduce more varied options that lead people to productive careers that don't necessarily involve 4 years on campus.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. I think it's really interesting that with all of the innovation around us, education just looks very similar than it did for our parents and our parents' parents. And what we really are seeing happening, which is truly exciting, is that taking risk in entrepreneurship is now bleeding into education directly. You see entrepreneurs making a career of disrupting education in and of itself. And that creates the flywheel that Andrew's talking about.
And what it takes, though, is guts. You say, Andrew, we don't teach our children to take enough risks.
Entrepreneurship right now in the U.S. is at a 24-year low among 18 to 30-year-olds. And I think it's exactly to the point that you're describing, which is that we're training our young people to be quite risk-averse and failure-averse. I mean, if you got an F and took it home to your parents, I'm sure they wouldn't be, hey, that was a great learning experience. I think that'd probably be a tough conversation. And I'm reflecting on this more now that I have a son. So I'm trying to, play that scene out and be like, oh, I should be pretty understanding. But our system right now also is very much in the classroom, where many college graduates were fortunate enough to graduate on time, which isn't everyone. But they haven't had many experiences outside of the classroom, which is in contrast to a place like Israel, where college graduates have had 2 or 3 years in operating environments and military service and others. And then their appetite for risk is much, much higher. If you look at their entrepreneurship statistics, they're the highest in the world.
He brings up Israel a lot as an example. In Germany, apprenticeship. Right. Is that a model we should seriously consider?
It is a model. More and more high schools are moving in this direction, but having a real opportunity to learn from mentors, folks who are in the entrepreneurial space. What Andrew's doing to bring them into the Detroits and other places is so desperately important. Our kids need mentors. They need role models. They need those opportunities.
Where's the safety net for that?
Yes.
Our society gives out student loans, as it should, but where is the safety net for people who take a different risk?
Let's be honest, right? Today, there isn't a safety net. And what students and what kids and what the youth need to see are examples of success. And they need encouragement from society around them to tell them that there is a new definition around success. And it doesn't mean that the first thing you do with your career is the right thing. And it doesn't mean that starting a company that fails is a failure.
I can't worry less about the safety net. I worry about the lack of opportunity. Andrew, how many applicants do you have for how many slots this year?
1,600 for 125.
Kids are looking for these kinds of opportunities, whether it's what he's doing or Teach America. There are wildly more applicants than slots available. I think my worry is less about protecting against failure. I think failure is fine. We need to create more opportunities for young people, whether it's to teach, to be entrepreneurs, to serve. We just have to take that to scale.
I agree that the ladder to opportunity is the most crucial piece. Around the safety net, we build a community of aspiring entrepreneurs so that if you do fail, you've got dozens of friends that you can call up and say, hey, my company didn't work out.
I need a job.
I need a job. And that's very real. Venture for America, because of our selectivity, provides a layer of protection and also some parental cover. I joke that if you have an offer from Deloitte and some startup in Baltimore, your parents will probably be pretty pro-Deloitte. But if you have Deloitte and Venture for America, then you start thinking, and then they say, do whatever you think is best. So the goal is that we can make heading to a startup in a place like Baltimore, Detroit, as appealing for both the young people and their parents as heading to an established firm.
Let's talk about women. It's a very important issue when you talk about who gets money to start businesses. When you look at the numbers, they are pretty staggering. Companies led by women that get venture capital funding bring in 12% more revenue than male-led companies. This is a statistic from just recently. 400,000 businesses were started by women in 2011, 2012, twice as many as men. Yet only 3% of venture capital funding between 2011 and 2013, 3%, went to companies with a female CEO. And Andrew, you have said women identify problems differently than men do. Look at some of these incredible female entrepreneurs. We have one on our panel. Elizabeth Holmes, what she's doing at Theranos. Look what Sarah Blakely's done at Spanx. I mean, there are so many more. You have said, Andrew, that women actually have to be better at what they are doing than men just to get the backing. They have to be better.
Well, as you said, only 4% of venture capitalists are women, about 20% of angel investors. So if you're a female entrepreneur, you have to really educate your investor class much more than a guy who comes in with a problem that a male investor could relate to. It's not just that, it's a lack of female role models and mentors. It's in some cases even having less disposable income to start a business in the first place. So there are structural impediments at every level for female entrepreneurs that we need to address in order to give rise to the companies that are going to solve problems like Katya's and Sarah Blakely's and Elizabeth Holmes.
Here's something that gives me some hope, and that is what millennials want. I'm a millennial. I'm an old millennial. I'm sort of on the cusp, but I'm a millennial. And there was a really interesting Accenture study that came out. It said a few things. It said only 15% of the class of 2015 says that they would prefer to work for a large corporation. And 60% of 2015 grads said they would rather work for a company that has a positive social atmosphere, even if it means lower pay. So when you talk about getting these young folks to wanting to be teachers, it's the atmosphere, it's this sense of wanting a deep desire to give back, so much so, and Andrew, I'd like you to address that they are willing to make less money.
Sure. I mean, as Secretary Duncan pointed out, we have 10 times more applicants than we have spots for, and they're not going to get rich working at these early stage companies in Detroit, Baltimore. There are all sorts of non-monetary drivers that millennials are attracted to that can bring them to do all sorts of things that will benefit society, like teaching or starting a business.
Where have you seen, what is the shift that you've seen in the millennial workforce as they've come in?
Well, I think they come in with a set of priorities that they want to live through their work. One of our credos is you want a career that reflects your values, and I think that's very much a millennial sentiment. Yeah. So they're looking for companies that will enable them to lead an integrated life where it's not that they have to compartmentalize and pretend to care about something during the day and then go home and try and forget about it. We also need more paths that don't involve incurring massive debt loads. I mean, we're up to $1.2 trillion in educational
and that is
debt.
Just public. That doesn't even include private.
Yeah, and most of it is government subsidized. So we're very much encouraging certain things. We need to encourage things that don't involve spending time in an environment that will cost tens of thousands of dollars. Just our apprenticeships tend to be much less expensive, I'm happy to say. It's one reason why that's the Venture for America model, and hopefully we can implement that across all sorts of sectors.
And who doesn't want a smart, eager person training with them?
This video was produced by our God tier patrons, Manuel Carrillo III and Bradley Davis. Become a producer of the show today.
Yang Gang 2020. Yang Gang 2020. Yang Gang 2020. Yang Gang. Yes.